So tonight we have Alita Norris, and I'm going to read her bio and then I'll tell you my personal opinion and why she was really invited. But we'll do the official. So Alita Norris is an expert leadership coach and trainer with over 30 years experience of developing leaders. I will tell you that she writes for various newspapers, magazines. She's a speaker. She's been all over. So actually what you're going to hear tonight, people travel and they pay for it to hear her speak. And she runs a company, Living as a Leader. And that's kind of when I first came across her. She writes for Small Business Times. And I have to tell you, tonight, this is personal. I invited her very selfishly for myself. When I was a CEO, I would get the Small Business Times, and it seemed invariably something would be going on in my life, and the company would be, doing some kind of downturn, or there'd be people that I was having problems with. We're never going to get through this. And I'd open up the Small Business Times, and Alita's article would be there, and it was magical. How many times it was like, oh, that's pretty straightforward and simple. She gave very practical advice. I was like, that's not bad, I could do that. And I'd go to work the next day and I'd implement it, and it would work. So I really am being truthful. That is selfish that I've invited her here. She has a great speech. As a matter of fact, Colleen and I talked to her on the phone, and so we're supposed to be asking her, selling her to come here, and she was kind of telling what she'd talk about. Colleen and I are whipping out paper, and literally while she's talking, we're taking notes like, oh, that's really good advice. Oh my gosh. So we were literally taking notes. So I think you're in for a real treat. Afterwards, please ask questions. That's what this is about, is that opportunity to interact with people. So you've got somebody with 30 years of experience for leadership. So if you're in HR, accounting, economics, nonprofit, it doesn't matter. You're going to be a leader, and as we talked last time, leaders are at every level, right? So it doesn't matter if you're the entry level, that middle, or the senior. Leaders lead at every level, okay? So without any further ado, I'll turn it over to the leader.
Gosh, I can't wait to hear what I say. That was such a nice introduction. So, hey everyone, I'm happy to be here. Wow, it's a big group and you're smiling. Is anybody a hostage? Because I get it. I know that some of you have to be here and some of you are here by your own free will. So regardless of why you're here, I hope you find a nugget. And a long time ago, I learned, and maybe you've already learned this, that if you attend an event like this and you walk away and you just learn one thing that will help you, that's all you need. So that's what you're looking for. You're just looking for one thing, and you're just going to add it, right? And I've been involved in additional development of my life post-master's degree for 30 years, and I just will never stop. I'll keep looking for nuggets until the day I die. So today we're going to talk about leadership, and in particular, we are going to talk about mistakes that leaders make. So before we delve into the topic, I just want to find out a little bit about the composition of you. So how many of you right now in your life are a leader of people? You formally are a leader of people. Okay, so just keep your hands up because I want to see who you are. Okay, all right. Now, how many of you informally are the leader of people? So you're not the formal boss, but you still have to influence people to do stuff for you. That really should be everybody, okay? Because everybody in some way needs to influence people to do things in collaboration with you and on your behalf, right? How many of you in this room already are the parents of someone? Is anybody a parent? Okay, yeah, we actually have a lot of parents in here. So you are a leader of your household. You're a leader of your children. And one of the greatest blessings, I was just sharing with some folks before we started, one of the greatest blessings of my work as a leadership development professional is that as I've helped people become better leaders of their employees, so too have I helped them become better leaders of their children. And the children of our world need good leaders, good parents in their homes. How many of you envision, as you grow in your career, that one day you would in fact like to be a manager of people? Let's see that. Okay. Now what's interesting is that most people who become a manager never went to school to learn how to become a manager. And how many of you have had enough bad bosses to know that they've not learned how to be a leader of people? Yeah. Yeah. So there are in fact a lot of bad bosses. And that really are experiences in working with employees who've shared their disappointment about their experience with their own boss or their leader is what influenced this content. So the 7 most common mistakes leaders make. There are probably lots more mistakes that leaders make. What we are going to talk about tonight are 7 common mistakes that we see over and over and over again. And what I encourage you to do is to think about your own self as you interact with people. So again, even though some of you are not formal leaders of people right now, this should still resonate with you, because all of us have within us an innate nature about us. In fact, how many of you know some people that kind of by their nature, they're pretty nice people? You know some of those people? And how many of you know some people who by their nature, they're just not very nice? Yeah. And statistically, do you know that about 50% of the total population likes people? They like to work with them, they like to support them, they're interested in what their opinions are, they're interested in what their concerns are, they just fundamentally care about people. And do you know that about 50% of the population doesn't like people all that much? And if we look at the leadership population of the world, they are a representation of the total population of the world. So think about that. So for all these years that I and my team have been helping leaders be better leaders of people, about half of those leaders don't like people all that well. And you know why they did it? Why did they move into leadership? Because it was another notch on their pole, right? It was a title, it was a raise, it was having a more important role in a more important role in the organization. So it was about them. It was about their ego. It was about their need to achieve, acquire. It was their climb to get that corner office. And it was very self-motivated. So I was talking with Brian earlier about, he said one of the conversations that came up last week was about nature or nurture, or born or made, right? Are leaders born or made? And to kind of set the stage for this, what I'll share with you is that just as a person who's born with some vocal talent, which not me, by the way, okay, but people who are born to sing, they still have a voice coach, right? People who are born with athletic ability, they still have a coach. So anybody who's born with some natural talent or what their God-given gift is, they still benefit by having a coach to help them become better. So what I'm going to say about our leaders born or made, the best leaders in the world are made through coaching and development. About 50% of the leaders we work with bring to the equation some born talent. So they've got some wiring in them that already help them. They have the greater ability to become a good leader. And other leaders that we work with, they are just a disaster. And not, the 50% who doesn't like people all that much, they're not all a disaster, but a good 10 or 15% of that population is a disaster. And we've helped offboard leaders from leadership roles who have no business at all being a leader of people. Just not, it's just not what they are wired to be, and it's not what they deserve to be. So we also are, we meaning the people in our company, we're avid believers that employees deserve to have a good experience when they go to work. And most people want to go to work and they want to do good work, and they want to be part of a winning team, and guess what? They want to be treated like a human being. And there are a lot of people every day at work who are treated like they're an object. And the mistakes that we're going to talk about today get at some of those things that leaders do that leave people feeling like they're just an object. And that gets my dander up, because I'm a huge fan of people being treated like people and being sent home at the end of the day with a sense of value and a sense of joy and a sense of fulfillment for what they got to contribute that day. So we want to send employees home to their families at the end of the day in a positive light so that dinner time feels better. All right? And so the bottom line is, the reason we develop leaders and the reason we want people like you to be good leaders is because we believe employees deserve to have a good experience. All right, so let's take a look at just a bit of data research. What does research tell us about the workforce today? And I'd like to begin by just giving you some of these numbers. Now, does everybody have the handout? Did we miss anyone? Okay, all right, great. So what we know in the world at large, and this statistic here is actually for the U.S., about a third of the workforce is engaged when they arrive at work each day. What's really sad is that means about 2/3 of the workforce is not fully engaged when they go to work. And the most recent data from Gallup tells us that about 14 to 18% of the workforce is full out bust, disengaged. They're frustrated, they don't feel valued, they feel disrespected, diminished, demoralized, demeaned, and that's not good. We also know that when employees see their manager as a person just like them, they're more engaged. And so there was a time when leadership was more hierarchical and leaders really kind of put up a wall between them and the employees. And so there was more of an us versus them, and you're the minions and we're the important people, and you will address me as Mr. or Mrs. and Sir, and you can't skip levels, so if I'm your boss's boss, you better not come to my door. Those days should be gone. And what needs to happen now is we're just all the same. We're just all the same. So if any of you have the privilege of being a leader of people, that's what it is. It's a privilege. And so now you get to help these people. And I've had leaders say to me, oh, do I have to do that? I said, no, you get to. Like, you get to. You get to talk to these people. You get to help these people. You get to make a difference in their life. And that is a blessing. That is not something that should feel unpleasant to you. We also know that 69% of people would work harder if they were better recognized. And universally, for people to be made to feel that they're good and that they're bringing value, almost universally, those people will work harder. And how many of you personally like it when someone you work for takes time to tell you that you're doing a good job and that you're valued? Yeah, that's right. And you know what? It's free. It's completely free. It's the most underutilized free tool to motivate people to do what we need them to do. And again, this is both at work with our employees and it's also at home with our families. So we need to make sure as parents of children that we're taking time to also tell them that they're good and they're doing well. There's a lot of movement in companies now, and so one number tells us that 23% of new hires leave within the first year. So back when I started in corporate America, which was in 1985, the long job still existed. And so there was this idea that you would find a career and you would join a company and you would stay with that company sometimes forever. 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. So that was called the long job. And certainly the generation that preceded mine, my parents and my grandparents, the 30-year job, and then you got the gold watch. And the thing is that look at all of you today. It's like, well, what would I do with a single function device? Like, why do I want a gold watch? Like, that doesn't even make sense to me, right? So now we're in a gig economy. And so our employees today are joining an organization with this idea of, I'll come here, I'll see what this feels like, I'll try this for a while, and if I like it, I'll stay, and if I don't like it, I'll go somewhere else. And the average length of a job now is 18 to 36 months. And the biggest churn is in the 1 year mark. So companies are saying, now, if I can just get my employees to stay at least a year, then I have a greater chance of getting them to stay 2 years or 3 years. And there are a lot of organizations now, if someone will stay 3 years, that feels like a real win. But it really all starts and stops with leadership, because look at this, more than half of US workers say, just give me a better boss. Like, keep the extra. If I'm making a competitive wage and I'm making money that I think is commensurate with my age, that's good. Give me a better boss. Give me someone who knows how to lead me. Give me someone who is paying attention to me, who cares about me. So we know that the number one reason that people are dissatisfied with their jobs or they leave their jobs is because of the relationship they have with their boss. And there are times, and I'll tell you, I tell a lot of HR people, you can have the welcome and onboarding of a new employee be as positive an experience as you can create. But when they leave their first week of onboarding with you, and you send them to who their leader is, and their leader could care less, or didn't remember that this was the day they were started, which happens, by the way, already you have a disillusioned employee. It's like, I just started and I'm disappointed. Like, this is just my first day. And so employees, if they are under-impressed with their leader, they'll go somewhere else. It's like, I don't need this. Like, Barney's loved me since I was 2 years old. And you don't seem to even care about me, so I'm going to go somewhere where I'm treated the way that I've been used to being treated in my life. Because I grew up in the self-esteem movement, right? I grew up in the affirmation movement. And so I was affirmed by parents and coaches and teachers in the community and my church and so on. And I have a boss who doesn't seem to care anything about me, right? So it would make sense that developing our leaders is the right thing to do. And right now, the leadership development industry is a $170 billion industry. So that underscores for all of us how important it is that you know how to lead people if that's on your checklist, if that's on your career bucket list. So with that, let's take a look at what the 7 most common mistakes are. Now, this is the list right here, and I'm going to go ahead and just get started with this first one, avoidance of key issues. And though you have some things that you can fill in along the way, once I flip this slide, don't worry, we'll get to all of these on the list. And I think we need one more. You don't have a worksheet, do you? Yeah, so we need one more down here. Everyone else good? Okay. So the first mistake that leaders make is they avoid difficult situations. Now, in our world, a difficult situation is one in which an employee is not meeting an expectation. And that would be for their performance, for their behavior, for their attendance and or timeliness. But mostly we're looking at performance and behavior. Now, how many of you have ever had an employee or worked with an employee or have a child who's not meeting an expectation? Right? It happens all the time, right? How many of you have observed, either in your own self or the leader of that person, not do anything about it? It's like, seriously? I mean, am I the only one who sees this? Right? Is someone going to do something about this? So why do you suppose it is that leaders in our companies and in our jobs don't address situations when employees are not meeting an expectation? So, does anybody have an idea about that? I'm going to just throw that out to you. Why don't they address it?
It can be uncomfortable.
It can be uncomfortable. Yeah. Let's hear a few more.
They don't know how to.
They don't know how. Yeah. I don't know. I'm like, yeah.
They don't want to offend people.
They don't want to offend people.
They just want to be liked.
They want to be liked. Oh my gosh, like, did you guys get the answer key to this? I mean, you're nailing it. Those are the reasons. And of course, right along with that, I hear I don't like conflict, So look at this. Like, you about nailed that list up there. I don't want to offend someone. I don't want to hurt their feelings. Some leaders, this is one I hear a lot. It's like, I don't have time to babysit these people. Leadership isn't babysitting. Leadership is a very important responsibility around clarity. What is your job? What are your responsibilities? What am I looking for from you? What does success look like? What am I paying attention to? And to be able to have a conversation with you when you're off track, it's a fundamental responsibility of a leader. Now, I'm going to give you a really simple formula if you're ever kind of faced with someone in your midst who isn't doing what you need. Let's just say they missed a deadline and it affects your work and it's frustrating to you, but you're thinking, I don't want to say anything because I don't want them to be mad at me. I don't want to offend them. So write down F plus Q equals A. F plus Q equals A. And so the fact is, so F is for fact, Q is for question, fact plus question equals action. In the conversation, we're eventually going to get to action. And so I say to this person, this coworker, or this person who works for me, it's like, hey, I noticed that you missed the deadline today, and you missed the same deadline a week ago. That's the fact. That's all I have to say. What do you think the question is? What happened? Yeah, what happened? I also heard why, and I'm always going to lean toward what happened because it's less likely to create defensiveness in someone. Because why is usually followed with why didn't you, right? But what happened gives me this possibility that it was maybe through my own mistakes or my own carelessness, but it also could be I was affected by something else in my environment. So what happened? And so then what we do is we just listen to people. We listen to what happened. And it could be they could be making up their own story, right? It could be just a really fun story that sounds ridiculous to us. We don't have to agree with the story. But once we hear the story, we can say, so thanks for sharing that with me. I didn't realize that, and that's helpful for me to know. Could we talk about what can happen moving forward? And could we, actually I gave you the A wrong. The A is agreement. Sorry about that. Fact plus question equals agreement. Can we agree on what needs to happen moving forward? All right? Now, there's a longer process, and what I'm going to say to you, if any of you would like a longer process on how to handle a difficult conversation, on that half piece of paper you have, there's right at the top, what did we call that? We called it a free playbook. That gives you 6 steps for having a difficult conversation, completely free, right? So you can just go to our website, give us your name and email address, and we'll just send that to you, and then we won't bug you, okay? But you'll have a more comprehensive approach to having a difficult conversation. Okay, so mistake number 2 is too much negative feedback. And along the way, by the way, jot down any questions you might have, because I'll cover this fairly quickly, and then we'll have some time to just answer some specific questions that you might have. So another mistake that leaders make is they give too much negative feedback. And why do you think that is? Why do people give too much negative feedback? Yes?
They feel it's their job.
Yeah, they feel it's their job, and I actually had a leader say those words to me. Well, I thought that was my job. I thought that's why I was here. Yeah, did I see something over here?
Just, yeah, I was gonna say it was their job,
Okay.
sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. That's all right. Yeah, does anybody else have an idea? Why do we give too much negative feedback?
It's easy to point out what you want to change.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's easy to point out what we want to change, right? Because we already expect the good stuff, and so we don't really notice the good stuff. But then when we see something that's out of line with what we're looking for, it stands out to us, right? And so we get kind of into this habit of what we call leave alone zap. And I want you to really think about this for a minute. How many of you are guilty of it? If someone's doing something that you like, you leave them alone. And if someone does something that you don't like, you zap them, right? And so it's called leave alone zap, leave alone zap, leave alone, leave alone, leave alone zap, right? And we become leave alone zap people. Now, another mistake we're going to talk about is about positive feedback, and what I really want you to think about today is to what degree are you a person in the world who shows up looking for good things versus being that person who's critical and self-righteous and, just thinking that people are never quite good enough for you. So to add a little bit to your list, negative feedback is a natural human response. For some reason, we're wired more to be mean than we are to be nice. I mean, don't you think? Human beings aren't always the nicest people. Has anyone ever cut someone off on the freeway? Do you get instant negative feedback? Yes. Or if you're at an intersection and the light turns green and you were just checking a quick text message and the guy behind you just lays on the horn, that's negative feedback. It's like, you could have tapped, dude, You didn't have to annihilate me with your horn. Some people are stressed, some people are getting pressure from their boss, some people are they're just Debbie Downers. Some of us in our formative years were raised with critical parents, right? So some people learned it from our parents, right? And I shouldn't say we, because my dad was the nicest person in the world. So I learned affirmations from my dad. But we're influenced by people that have, modeled for us how things are meant to be. How many of you have been on the receiving end of what you feel like is an unfair amount of negative feedback? Yeah. And when you get an unfair amount of negative feedback, what's the result of that? You get discouraged and defensive. Yeah. It's kind of like, screw you, right? Like if there's something you want from me, you're not helping me to want to give you what you want. So the thing that we forget is that we hurt ourselves. If this is the approach we're taking to try to get what we want, this hurts us. This hurts leaders in the end. Okay, so then why don't leaders give more positive feedback? Why isn't that happening? They don't think about it. That is exactly right. They don't, never really thought about it. As soon as we start talking to leaders about the importance of giving positive feedback, they feel like someone's just invented sliced bread for them. It's like, oh my gosh, never ever thought about doing this, right? Why else don't they give positive feedback?
I think it's your job.
Right.
It's your job to do it perfect.
Exactly. It's like, well, seriously? I gotta thank them for doing their job? That's what their paycheck is for, right? And when we look at what motivates people, their pay is like 6th or 7th on the list. You know, for those of you who are studying engagement of employees and what motivates employees, money is down on the list. Doing meaningful work, being valued, being developed, having good leadership and clear expectations, those are the things that people are looking for. So I don't have a plan for it. Now, one of the things that I encourage all of you to think about is setting a daily quota for yourself for how many doses of positive feedback you'll give to the world. And I like 5 at a minimum. Like, do not put your head on your pillow to go to sleep until you've told 5 people something positive. And hey, if it's time to go to bed and you've got a roommate and no one's heard anything good, you know, nice haircut, love the shoes you're wearing, really like that dinner you made, you know, give it all. Just give it all to someone. But don't go to sleep until you've added some positivity to the world. Have a plan for it. Okay. All right. So let's move on and let's take a look at the 4th mistake, and that is disrespectful treatment of people. And I really don't like this one. I'll tell you, one of the things up on this slide tells us that 42% of 1,000 employees have reported incidences of yelling in the workplace. Now, what I want to share with you right now is if any of you, when you are in a stressful moment with another human being, if any of you are a yeller and you yell at people, what I'm going to say to you is, who do you think you are? Like, stop that. I don't get it. I don't get grown-up people yelling at grown-up people. And honest to God, I see it in the workplace. I see people who are in their 30s and their 40s and their 50s, like yelling at people, and there's no place for it. Use your words. Just use your words. And you can even say to someone, listen, I'm really upset with you right now, and can I tell you why? Can I just share why I'm upset, right? And then in fairness, they might say, great, I'm upset with you too. At which point you're going to say, tell me why. You know, let's talk about this. We have to get better about not using our emotion to sort through issues that we have with people. When I was raising my children, I was a single mom. I felt like I had a lot of stress in my house, only because, and I'm kind of a calm person anyway, and I am in that 50% of the population who likes people, and I think by nature I'm a nice person. There was a lot of stress though. I was raising these 3 children. I was running a company. I was coaching soccer, and so every once in a while I just would fly off the handle. And one day my 12-year-old daughter said to me, Mom, I've decided that if you yell at me, I'm not going to yell back. And I said, who do you think? No. I said, well, that's intriguing. I don't know if I said that to her when she was 12, but I said, well, that's interesting. And so I thought for a minute, and I said, you know what, that's the better way. Because even though we're stressed, it doesn't mean we have to yell. So at the time I had twins who were 10 years old. They were downstairs. My daughter and I marched downstairs and I said, hey, new family value. We are going to become a non-yelling family. And so everyone was like, okay. And when you're 12, when you're 10 years old, you don't really know what that means. But for all the rest of the years that I raised these children, anytime someone raised their voice, I said, just use your words. Just use your words. And, I'm happy to talk with you and we don't have to yell. And so I've shared that story many times over the years, and I've had leaders approach me after an event just like this, right? So someone may come up to me and say, I heard you speak 3 years ago, you told that story about when you became a non-yelling family, and that day we became a non-yelling family, right? Now I like that, because I just don't think that's the way we should do things. And so if I had the opportunity to help fewer people be on the receiving end of this, I really like this. And look at this, it's one of my favorite quotes. And so if you're one of these people, remember this. Remember this quote. Because most of the time you are going to look like the stupidest person in the room. And so what we have to do, and it's a really key part of the leadership development process and the growth as a person, is I learn to address my issues and resolve my issues without being emotional, right? And many of us are wired. Many people are wired to be yellers. Okay, mistake number 5 is an imbalance of accountability and inspiration. If we go back to the total population, let's divide you in half. About half of the population is wired toward, let's just get work done. Okay, because I like to work. When I come to work to do work. I want the people around me to do work. If I ask you how your vacation is, fine is a good answer, right? I don't care the name of your children. I just don't have a need to be all kumbaya, right? Now, on the other half of the population, on the inspiration side, these are the people who say, you know what, I know we're here to do work. I also like people. I care about people. I'm interested in their opinions. I'm interested in their ideas. I'm interested in how things affect them. And I like to work with them. And so each of us has to know by our nature what side of that scale are we on. Now, if this is the midpoint, and let's just say I'm on the accountability side, if in the general population I'm here on the accountability side, that's very different from somebody who's over here, right? And you've all met someone who's way over here. Those are the people in companies that I work with who they're jerks. And there are a lot of people who wear a jerk badge on their arm very proudly. And they think it's a good thing. And I'm here to tell you it's not a good thing. It's not a good thing to be a jerk. And it's not something to be proud of. And so as we all continue to go through our lives, we have to check ourselves, and we have to think about how we're showing up to the world. And there have been many people on this accountability side who, and their pride comes from how much work they get done, right? And that's great. That's great. They get a lot of work done. They're the fastest worker. They're the most talented worker. But if you've got nothing going on that side of the scale and you treat people like objects, that is not okay. And so we spend our phone rings most at Living as a Leader with the scenario, we've got a guy, right? And he's really good, and he's been here a long time, he's got a lot of tribal knowledge, gets a lot done, but he's really hard on people. And so we said, give us some examples. And so we get the disrespectful behavior list. And so as we work with these people, we're trying to equip them with some of the stuff on this side. Like, how can you show care for people when you're not wired for it? So even if it's not in your wiring, you can still do it. One leader that, I could tell so many stories, but I'll just share one. One leader I worked with, he was part of a 4,000 employee company. This company had 550 leaders, and the new CEO came in and said to all of its leaders, we're changing the culture. And this was a garbage company. We're changing the culture, and we're going to become respectful, high-performing, and then other things on the list. One of the most high-performing leaders in one of the most productive sites was way over on the accountability side, and so he was required to change, or he would lose his job. One of his first assignments was to give 2 people positive feedback in one day, and you would have thought you were sending him for a root canal. He couldn't understand it. He has bigger fish to fry. This is the most ridiculous assignment. And at any rate, so he began working with one of the coaches on my team, and then he ran into me, this leader ran into me a couple of months later at an event that I happened to be leading that he was a part of, and he came up to me and he said, oh my God, he said, I have to tell you, Rick gave me this really stupid assignment to give people positive feedback, but do you know something? When you give people positive feedback, they really like it, right? And I said, yeah, I did know that, and tell me about this. And he learned, because we were developing him on the inspiration side, he learned that it was a good thing. And he became a more well-rounded leader. Now, on the flip side, I was working with a leader who did both sides really, really well. Very good balance. And so I just was kind of stepping back thinking, what, I don't know what you are. I don't know what your home base is, your by nature. And so I said to him, I said, Mike, you handle the accountability so well of your people. You show such care and support of them. What's your preference? If you had your druthers. And he said, if I had my druthers and I could do anything I want, I'd be in a corner with a Diet Coke and a Twinkie writing code all day, right? And so that's, if he didn't have to work so hard to be a balanced leader and just say, let go of the rubber band, it would snap way over there, right? Because he's all about the work. And he's a representative of a developed leader. Of someone who figured it out. And I promise you that when he first started to figure it out, if you think about him being on the inspiration side, and I like the rubber band analogy, if this is my home base and the rubber band is connected, and so someone is telling me you've got to show more care for your people, I put that rubber band around me, and I've got, I'm working to be nice. And then when I get to go home at the end of the day, I take that damn rubber band off, and it's like, thank God, I can relax, and I don't have to work so hard. If you're not working hard, and if you're not uncomfortable as a leader of people, you're probably not a good leader. And we call that versatility. The versatility to move away from my home base. Okay. Mistake number 6 is doing, not leading, and this happens frequently. And so we promote our best performers into a leadership role. And now my job is to get work done through people, but yet what I'm so good at is over here when I was the doer. Like when I was the doer, I just cranked out work, and I was the highest performer, and I had a strong reputation, and I was highly regarded. So now I'm a leader of people, and I'm leading people who aren't like me. Because most people who get moved into leadership are like the top 5% or the top 10%. But when you come and lead people, here's a question, what percentage of your workforce can comprise the top 10%? 10%, right? And so 90% of your employees are destined to disappoint you by merely showing up. And so what happens is, if I'm leading people who are they're not top 10%ers, and they're not doing it good enough, they're not doing it fast enough, they're not doing it the way I do, one of the most common mistakes a leader makes is, just move out of the way, let me do it. It'll just be quicker. Or an employee say, hey, will you show me how to do this? Oh, I don't have time, let me just do it. Have any of you been on the receiving end of that? Yeah. It's like, yeah, just let me do it. So I won't develop you, but I'll just keep jumping back and forth between doer and leader. As soon as you get promoted into leadership, you have signed up to learn how to be a leader of people. And it's a different skill set. So just because you were a good doer does not mean you'll be a good leader. And our best leaders, by the way, are typically not our best doers. I'd rather have a C player become a leader than an A player in most situations, because they're more patient, they're more understanding, and our A players can be intolerant and impatient, and they bring an air of arrogance, which leads us to the last mistake, which is lack of humility. And there are a lot of leaders in the world who think they are all that. And in one situation, I had a leader walk into the room and he was frustrated about something and he stood before his employees and he said, I want to get one thing perfectly clear. You work for me. Now, if I were one of those employees, I would say not anymore, right? Because we just don't want that kind of arrogance and that kind of vibe anymore. Today what we want is a leader who walks into a room and says, I am so grateful for all of you. And I am so honored to be able to be the leader of you and to help you come here every day and do good work. And I take that responsibility very seriously. So thank you, and then we could go on and on and on. Some employees never have a leader in their whole life who says something like that to them. I value you, right? What do you need from me so that you can do the good work that I and this company and our customers need you to do? Now, we've zipped through 7 common mistakes. It's 5 to 7. I realize that some of you are going to blast out of here. Some of you might stay for a bit longer. I thought what I would do is get to a point where I could take some questions maybe from some of you who have to leave. And then I understand some of you get to settle in just a bit more. I'm remembering that right? Okay, so anybody who has to leave, and also you'll notice that I'm encouraging you to think about, of all these 7 mistakes, what one would you like to be mindful of for yourself? And I'm a short list person. If I were you, I would walk out of here today with just one mistake that you're really going to focus on overcoming. And then you'll see too that I'm encouraging you to think about one aha, that nugget, that one thing from today. So that said, for anyone who is going to be leaving shortly, do you have any questions that we could chat about? Yes?
Like I coach soccer, and I was just thinking about how does yelling compare in sports versus, talking about obviously, yelling towards a grown adult, if I'm working with kids or if I'm working with adults.
That's excellent, yeah. In fact, I'm going to tell you what, if you all, there might be something here. If you go to livingasaleader.com, you can sign up for our blog, and I just wrote the next blog, and it's about coaching soccer. So I coached soccer for 7 years, and one of the things that I was adamant about is we're not yelling. Now, we're going to yell to encourage, and we're going to yell to do the right thing, but we're not going to yell angrily. That was one of the values of the team. And so I had assistant coaches that liked, and I was the head coach. Can you believe that? Like what? That happened, right? And so I said I had expectations for the players, and if you have written expectations, you don't have to yell. Right? So the expectations for the players were be on time for practice, have all of your equipment in your bag, which you have packed yourself, have your water bottle, work your hardest, and another one was arrive at game time 20 minutes early so you can warm up. So those are the things I'm looking for. I had expectations for the parents. Do not pack your player's bag. Have them to practice on time if you are their driver. Do not coach them from the sidelines to run the ball, because that may not be their role, right? Don't coach from the sidelines. And you may only cheer cheerfully. You may not cheer angrily, right? And then the assistant coaches, my main thing for them was you may not angrily yell at these players. So there were times I'd walking down the sideline and I'd go to a coach and I would just say, we're not doing that, right? Or if a player didn't meet an expectation, you don't have to yell at them on the field, you sub them, right? And then you pull them off the field and you say, do you know why I pulled you off the field? Yeah, I know why I pulled you off the field, because I did that stupid thing. Yeah, you're right, why, what happened? And then, are you going to do that again? No, I'm not going to do that again. It's like, great, perfect. And so we don't ever have to yell. And we lose, I think we lose some credibility. And there are examples, right? Bobby White he was effective as a coach and he was a yeller, but I don't support his coaching style, not at all, because he demeaned and diminished and demoralized a lot of people along the way. So does that help answer that question? Okay? You lead toward expectations and you don't let your emotion do the work for you. Okay? Yeah, let's have another question from someone who has to lead. It can be anybody. Does anybody else have a question? I mean, give you time to think about it. Yeah, because I know you do.
I know you didn't talk about this, but what's your expectation of family and life as being a leader for time management and trying to be good at these things, and managing and home life and leadership?
Yeah. So the question is, what ideas do I have around managing home life and leadership? So I'm gonna go back to this slide right here, schedule leadership, and really what I'll talk about is just schedule life. A lot of people are overwhelmed because they work big jobs, they have family responsibilities, they're involved in the lives of their children at whatever stage they're at, and trying to fit in whatever your own habits are for health and enjoyment. And, people are overwhelmed. And so I like calendar blocking. And one of the things that I encourage you to do, in fact, I lead kind of a workshop on this just on my own because I'm really a fan of living by design. Live by design, not by default. So we all know those people who wake up every day and they're exasperated, 30 minutes after they wake up, and they're already yelling at the kids, and by the time they get to work, they're hyperventilating, and we know a lot of people like that, and I think those people aren't living on purpose. And so what I suggest you do is I suggest you get out a piece of paper and you write down your buckets of your life, right? And so that's going to be your work, your workouts or your health, your family, your hobbies, your what else? You're taking care of your home and your space, right? So I've got about 10 things on this diagram that I call the wheel of life. And then what you do is you really prioritize those. Of these, bye everyone. See you. Thank you. Yeah, have a good class. Then what we do is we prioritize that. Because if we have 10 compartments of our life, all 10 compartments can't be the top priority. So you might say, well, my family and my work and my health and the health of my family, those are my number one priorities. And then next what I would do is for each one of those, I would write down the words daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually. And now what I'm going to say is, okay, so relative to my health, what do I want to do every day? Well, I want to drink 64 ounces of water. And I want 30 minutes of movement outside of just my daily movement. And whatever else. What do I want relative to my children every day? Well, I commit it every single day. I want to be able to drive them to school. Okay, so that's in what's that block on my calendar? What do I want to do weekly, monthly, quarterly? And then I go down my list. What about work? What do I need to do every day? Well, I have to put in 8 hours a day, and I have flexibility about when I start and when I stop. So I'm going to give work the blocks between 9 and 5 or 8 and 4. So that's my work block. That's how we get control of out of control schedules, is we calendar block it. And I typically work with 30-minute increments, but you can drill it down to 5-minute increments. It's like, I love to read, but I don't have time to read. Yeah, you do. Every day, what some people do is they keep a book on their nightstand, and every day they wake up and they just open it up to a page and they read 2 pages, and it's like, okay, I got my dose. That's how I handle it, right? So that's an idea. We can be creative. If you want to do it, you'll find time to do it. And also make sure that you have determined how much sleep you need and figure out how to get it. And you can't believe the number of executives that I coach to stop being so tired all the time. I have them nodding off in meetings. It's like, okay, how much sleep do you need? What time do you go to bed? 1 o'clock in the morning. Why do you go to bed at 1 o'clock in the morning? Oh, because, I get on the internet and it's like, stop it. Don't go to bed at 1 o'clock in the morning. Don't be on the internet just looking at stuff. Go to sleep, right? Get a good night's sleep so that when you show up to your family and your work and your community and wherever else you serve, that you've taken care of yourself. I call that extreme self-care, right? So does that answer your question?
100%.
Okay, good. All right, what else? Isn't this fun? Yeah, what else?
Talk to us a little bit, why so many bad leaders? So, I've been in the workforce for 25 years in both management as leader, but amazing amounts of very important people are terrible leaders, I've noticed. And
Yeah.
I've almost seen middle managers be as strong, collegial managers be better leaders.
Yeah. So the biggest reason that we see a number of bad leaders is because they're allowed to be. And there's two levels of responsibility for a bad leader, and it really starts at the top level of the organization. As the president and CEO of the company, you're at the helm of this ship, and you have to put a stake in the ground for what you will not tolerate. And you cannot harbor a bully, or you cannot harbor someone who's ineffective just because of whatever, right? Just because they're a high performer, just because they have tribal knowledge, you can't harbor them. Now, another reason, the next most important person is the leader of that leader, right? And so the reason that leaders are allowed to be ineffective, and sometimes it's that they're bullies, and sometimes it's just that they're so hands-off, and they're so permissive, their heads are in the sand, that they're not engaged in leadership. It's because their boss is not managing them to be better. And their boss is not asking them to be better, and there's no development plan, and there's no consequence, right? And so we help organizations with a leader who's ineffective. He has a choice. He can either grow into what you want as a leader. That's another thing. Organizations have to characterize what a good leader looks like, right? What does it even look like? So either that leader develops into that, or they're going to behave their way out of a job. And we're not doing enough of that. And when we get involved in organizations, our antenna's up for that. In most of the work we do, when we go into a company, we work with all the leaders. That's our system. It's a comprehensive, develop all leaders at all levels across all sites and shifts. So we develop everybody, and so our antenna is up. And when we're getting feedback or we're observing some things about a particular leader, we share those concerns. And those are shared. And this is just an important thing to note, is that coming into the process, the leaders who are involved know that our antenna's up, and we're looking for 3 clusters of leaders. We're looking for those who are doing great, we're looking for those who are doing terribly, and then the muddled middle. And so we can share with the human resources people that we typically work with, here's kind of where everybody falls. And these people over here, we suggest to you that you be mindful of them and that you create an expectation for them that they either get better, or you can't guarantee for them that they'll be able to stay here, right? And so fortunately, we see that happen in some places. Yeah, it's very sad. It's sad for us too. And it sounds like from your 25 years of experience, it's sad for you.
Not every
Yeah.
time, but you
Right.
just see it more than you imagine.
Right, yeah, absolutely, yeah. And incidentally, when I started doing leadership development 30 years ago, which also kind of sounds like a joke, doesn't it? A little bit like soccer coaching, right? And at that point, I was doing training from a book, period, right? I was just teaching from a book, and now I have so many more stories that I get to share. But 30 years ago, developing leaders and investing in leaders was considered the soft stuff, right? And it was called fluff, and the soft skills. And I had executives back in that day too said, you know what, we got better stuff to do than this cycle battle stuff, right? And now it's very strategic. effective leadership is a very strategic part, and it's a human capital investment, just like buildings and equipment are human, or are capital investments. So, you know, that's good for employees. We're making some progress.
Among the research, Heather, that you were referencing, or that you've gone through, is there anything that shows certain industries that are tending towards better leaders or worse leaders, or is it just an across the board?
Well, so that's a really good question. So are there industries that lean toward better leaders or not? And so what's interesting is, remember, we go back to this born or made. So how many of you are familiar with these 4-quadrant behavioral style assessments like DISC, or what color are you, or what animal are you? So of the 4 quadrants, 2 of those quadrants are people oriented, right? And so one is the expressive person who's like one to many. They just love to be in front of a crowd and, you know, cheering everybody up. And then the other type of person is one to one. And they have a more quiet nature. They're the caring people. They're the ones who, you know, want to just make sure every person's okay. And then we have 2 quadrants that are about getting the work done. And the dominant drivers are real hard chargers about driving toward results, and the compliant analyticals are very methodical people. Now, the part of the population that sometimes gives us the best material to work with are those people in the people who are in those 2 people quadrants. And so they skew, there are some industries they skew to, right? So the helping professions, like nursing and teaching, we might skew more toward, well, and it's not 100% on that side, but instead of 50-50, it might be 60-40, or it might be 65-35, though probably not that much. And so we might have more cooperation if we're working with people who are in roles that are influenced by what's your basic style. But I'll tell you, we worked in all industries. We do a lot of work in manufacturing. We do work in higher education. We do work in healthcare. We do work in energy. We do work in garbage. If you named an industry, we probably work in that industry. And if we put 50 leaders in a room, we're still going to have about half of them who give us something to work with, and about half of them who don't. And it's interesting how the cross-section still stays pretty representative of the human population as a whole. Yeah, so if anything, we might see a bit of skewing, right? In manufacturing, we might see more of that aggressive behavior. But I'll tell you what, when we get, let's say that we're in the health profession and we're working with nurse supervisors, and they're all very amiable people, what we're going to get from them is we're going to get passive-aggressive behavior, right? And so what they're going to do is they're going to say, you know what, I'm done with you. Like, I don't even know what to do with you anymore, so you're dead to me, right? You know, another nurse, not a patient, right? So human nature still shows up as aggressive or passive-aggressive unless we're developing assertiveness. And the difference between being assertive and being aggressive, they're both candid, but one's disrespectful and one's respectful. So we're helping people to become assertive. Let's get rid of the bookends. Yeah. It's a good question. Yeah.
Okay, so in a climb the ladder culture, how do you get away from promoting the top performers into something that, like, how do you justify promoting somebody who's not a top performer into a leadership role when that's seen as the goal?
Yeah, that's a great question. So if we're in a climb the ladder culture, how do we not hire the best performer? So one of the best ways to prevent us from doing that is to actually have identified the criteria associated with being a good leader. And in most cases, being a good leader does not have on the list be the best doer. In fact, I've never seen that on the list for being a good leader. But it really is about, can you coach people? Can you listen to people? Are you patient? Are you discerning? Are you kind? we see kindness. In fact, I was just in a meeting yesterday and we talked about kindness as a value of a company. Are you respectful, right? And we need to be looking for the employees who are bubbling up as informal leaders. So what we should be paying attention to as our companies is who are people coming to informally because they're the helpers and they're the encouragers and they're the ones who are training people and they're patient, right? And so that's what we should be paying attention to. So we take our highest performer and we should be paying attention to like nobody wants to go by them. And then we're gonna promote them? That's just reckless. So we have to start with the identified criteria and the values, and that's what we promote to.
Does a leader need power? And how can a leader avoid being corrupted by power?
So I hear power, and just tell me again, what's your question?
Yeah, I mean, like, how can a leader avoid being corrupted by power?
Oh, corrupted by power. Oh, yeah, that's a good one. How can a leader avoid being corrupted by power? Well, so I'll tell you, so first of all, we have to have our own value system. And we have to know what we won't compromise. And so if wherever we all show up in the world, we have to decide who am I as a person, right? So I'm kind, I'm honest, I have integrity, I can be trusted, I'm hardworking, etc. So that's me. And I will not compromise it. I'm ethical, right? I'm ethical. So now I come into an organization and I may even be teased by golden handcuffs. I may be given a really high salary. I may be given some kind of a, as we climb the ladders, we may be given some kind of a package if we stay. And then if a culture is a negative culture, and if a culture lacks integrity and ethical behavior, I could be, the carrot, right? Like I could be teased by the carrot. So I have to decide if I'm willing to be corrupted. Am I corruptible? Because if I'm not corruptible, then I'm just going to say, this is not what I'm looking for, and I'm going to choose to leave. And they're going to say, wait, what? Like we're paying all this money, how could you walk away? It's like, you know what, my values are too important to me to acquiesce to your cultural norms, and I'm not going to participate in that. Does that help? Yeah. We have to know who we all are. And a lot of people also, just like we talk about planning your day, we also have to plan ourselves. Who am I as a person? What do I value? What's important to me? What will I not compromise? And incidentally, if you set a value for yourself and you don't honor it, what does that make you? I value respect, and then I treat people disrespectfully. I value honesty, but I'm willing to change a number on a spreadsheet, right? Just to keep my boss happy. Okay, what does that make me? A hypocrite. It's exactly what it makes me. It makes me a hypocrite, right? And so to have integrity means that I state a value and then I live by that value. And if I make a mistake, I take ownership of it. So if I'm disrespectful, I need to say, I'm sorry, I handled that poorly and I treated you really badly. I'm sorry for that. We all get to do that. We have to own it though. And incidentally, I'd like to just interject here. How many of you have ever had to apologize to someone? Okay. Now, most people don't apologize very well. And I want to start a sentence and I want to tell you what the next two words are that very often follow when somebody is apologizing. Okay, I'm sorry, but you. There you go. Right? Yeah, I'm sorry, but you. It's like, no. Let them own their own stuff. You own your stuff. Right? So when you apologize, just apologize. I'm sorry for how I treated you, period. Now, if they can respond in kind, that's fantastic. Not everybody can, though. Not everybody yet has that strength within them. They don't have the confidence. And so people by nature are self-protective. They are afraid. They are protecting they're protecting an ego that they don't really have, right? And so the people who are most able to say, I'm sorry, have a confidence that allows them to be less than perfect. That vulnerability, courage. If any of you are interested in those topics, trust, courage, vulnerability, I just came across an influencer within the past 6 months that other people have known about longer, but her name is Brené Brown, B-R-E-N-E, do you know her? She's amazing. She's amazing. Brené Brown, and she just blows up YouTube if you type in her name. But she's studied just us and how broken we are, and even in this room, the people we pass on the street who look, confident and all put together and happy. There's just lack of confidence that we can't even see. So that would be good if you're on a walk or you're driving. Just put on a bit of Brené Brown. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. What else? We have time for one or two more questions. Anybody? Yes.
What's the best leadership advice you've gotten?
The best leadership advice that I have. I love that question, and what comes to mind immediately for me is get over yourself, right? So leadership is an other-centered role. It is not a self-centered role, and too many people think that being a leader is about them, and it's not. It's about everybody around you. And I think the next piece that I would add, and it maybe is a bit in tandem, is care about people. And if you don't care about people, don't become a leader. Because caring about people is paramount to getting from them what you need. And I think at Living as a Leader, certainly a big part of what we do is we teach people to care who might not otherwise. Yeah. And learn how to be a leader. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mine's actually two parts. For one, since we've been talking about the bad leaders that a lot of people have, do you have any advice for how the employee can work with their bad leader? And then secondly, for like myself, getting into a role where I'm going to be working with leaders, working with their employees, what kind of advice would you have?
Okay. So what about an employee who has a bad leader? So there's a couple of things. And one, we can have conversations upward, even though it's very difficult. And if we have a bad leader, we can't often change who they are as a person. What we can do, though, is we can zero in on the one or two or maybe three behaviors that we're really struggling with. And they can be behaviors that are present that are hurting us, or behaviors that aren't present that we need. Right? So we could go to our leader and we could say something like, I have a favor to ask of you. And I just want to put it out there, and certainly I can't tell you what to do. I just want to share with you something that's important to me. So one of the things that's happening in how we work together is that I have a need to meet with you every week, if only for 5 or 10 minutes. And that has been something that you've been unable to do. And I don't know if unable or unwilling, and I get it that you have a lot going on. I just want you to know that's difficult for me. And I could be more productive if I actually could meet with you just 5 minutes each week to check my list with you. Is that something you would be willing to do? Right? Now, at this point, maybe your leader will say, Lisa, I can do that. And I'm so sorry, and I can do that. And your leader might say, no, I'm sorry, I can't. Like, I don't think you should I don't think I should have to babysit you, and, no, I'm not gonna do that. So I think, first of all, if we zero in on what's the actual behavior that we're struggling with, that's better than, you're not giving me what I need. Well, what is it? Well, I don't really know. I just know it's not really what I need, right? So zero in on the behavior. And then if you have no on the part, what what you each have to think about is to what degree is this person adversely affecting the quality of my life? And if every day when I come to work, if I have anxiety and if I can't sleep at night and I'm not eating well and as the closer I, in my car, the closer I get to work, the more I feel this tightness in my chest, leave. Just leave. And I can't tell you how many people I've told to leave. Because life is too short to be in a place where you're disregarded to that degree that there's no middle ground. And so, yeah, does that help me some?
Yeah.
Okay.
It wasn't my box, just.
Okay, yeah, right, it wasn't Lisa's boss, yeah, I was like, I'm in the front. Right, yes, okay. So what I would like to do just to kind of wrap us up, is it it's time to wrap up, right?
Yes.
Okay, is could we end by having 3 or 4 of you share something that was helpful for you today? So what was helpful? That's gonna be, well, let's do 4, tick it out of the room, that'll take us 1 minute. One thing that was helpful for you, what was your nugget? Who's got one? Yes.
So I like the phrase that you added, the term, you used, what happened.
Okay.
So I work in manufacturing and it's always production, and a lot of times when you're not making production, it's a why.
Okay.
So I think I'm gonna use that.
Okay, good. Where do you work?
PPG now.
Okay, good. All right, another one. What's your nugget? Yep.
A non-yelling household.
Okay, good. Yes, yes. I like that. Okay, yes.
The leave alone zap.
Okay, leave alone zap. Good.
Give any compliments to someone every day?
Okay, compliments every day. And I saw another hand over here. Yes.
Well, it's like a little quote, the out of control emotions make smart people.
Okay, good. Excellent, good. Hey, thank you so much, everyone. It was really a joy to chat with you and work with you, and have a great life, because I probably won't see you again.